Hello, and welcome back to Math Matters. I'm Miss Matthews, and today we're going to be looking at the praying mantis problem. Today we're going to do some problem solving, and your goal is to solve a word problem and be able to justify and represent your thinking. That means that you can prove why your answer makes sense and explain how you got it. You will have an opportunity to reflect on how you did with this at the end of the lesson. Also, as you are working today, you will have an opportunity to practice your communicator skills by showing your strategy in writing, using numbers, pictures, or words. You're also going to have an opportunity to think critically and creatively about what you need to do as a problem solver to be successful. Here are some materials you will want to have ready: a pencil or something to write with, some paper, and if you want, counters like coins, paper clips, or even crayons. I'll give you 30 seconds to get those materials. Here is today's problem. Follow along as I read aloud. The praying mantis problem. Edwin saw some praying mantises while he was taking a walk. Each praying mantis had the same number of legs. What are you picturing in your mind as you read this story so far? I'm picturing a boy walking on a path through the woods, and he sees some praying mantises, and each one has the same amount of legs. What are you wondering about? You may be wondering, how many praying mantises did Edwin see? How many legs does a praying mantis have? You may even been thinking, what is a praying mantis? So let's take a look at some pictures of them. Here is a picture of a praying mantis. What are you noticing? Here is another picture of a praying mantis. What do you notice? What do you wonder? And here is a drawing of a praying mantis. Now what do you notice and wonder? Here are some fun facts about the praying mantis. They have great vision. They are agile like cats. They attack their prey swiftly. They only eat live prey like insects and even hummingbirds. And they are gifted with camouflage. Now back to our problem. Follow along as I read it aloud. Edwin saw some praying mantises while he was taking a walk. Each praying mantis has 6 legs. What changed? What did we learn from this new information? We now know that each praying mantis has 6 legs. What does that mean that each praying mantis has 6 legs? Yes, it means that one praying mantis has 6 legs. That information is going to be important to know, so I'm going to want to keep track of that. I think I'll put a box around that. As a problem solver, how do you keep track of important information? I think we have some new information, so follow along as I read the problem aloud. Edwin saw 8 praying mantises while he was taking a walk. Each praying mantis had 6 legs. What changed this time? What did we learn from this new information? Now we know that Edwin saw 8 praying mantises. That's a lot. I'm going to put a box around that so I can remember that information. Now I'm wondering, what questions could we ask about this situation? Let's reread and see what we have to figure out. Edwin saw 8 praying mantises while he was taking a walk. Each praying mantis had 6 legs. How many legs were there altogether? So what do we need to figure out? Yes, we now need to figure out the total amount of legs that Edwin saw. Let's estimate. Was the number of legs Edwin saw less than 6, equal to 6, or greater than 6? How do you know? Now I will give you some time to solve the problem. This is where you can practice being a creative and critical thinker as a mathematician as you consider how to solve this problem. You can also practice communicating as a mathematician as you think about how you can use objects, pictures, or numbers to answer this question. Now let's see some strategies that Mrs. Smith used for solving this problem.
So one way you may have thought about solving the praying mantis problem and how many legs Edwin saw is to draw a picture we know that Edwin saw 8 praying mantises. So I can draw 8 praying mantises. Here's one praying mantis. And we know that each praying mantis had 6 legs. And I realize my praying mantis drawing is not the best. So maybe yours looks better, but this is just how I'm representing my thinking, so it doesn't have to be perfect. All right, here's my next praying mantis with another 6 legs and another praying mantis with 6 legs. So there we have 3 praying mantises. Here's a 4th one with 6 legs. And a 5th one with another 6 legs. A 6th one with another 6 legs. Seven praying mantises. And last one with another 6 legs. 8 praying mantises, 6 legs. So now that represents what Edwin saw, but now I need to think about how am I going to figure out how many legs he saw altogether. Well, one way I'm looking at this is this looks like one big long repeated addition equation. I can add up all my groups of 6 together and figure out what that is. Well, one way I can do that is to combine 2 6s to make 12. Because I know 6 and 6 makes 12. So I'll just keep doing that as long as I can. Okay, and here we have another repeated addition equation to figure out. So now I can combine my 12s. I know 12 and 12 is 24 because 10 and 10 is 20 plus 2 and 2 is 4, so that gets me to 24. And here's another 12 and 12 to get to 24. Now I can combine these two 24s. Well, I know 20 and 20 makes 40, and another 4 to get me to 44, and another 4 to 48. So now I know that Edwin saw 48 legs on his walk. So this year in 3rd grade, you've been making connections to addition and multiplication. So now I'm wondering what multiplication equation matches with this representation that we see here. Let's think about what we know. We know that we have 8 praying mantises. So those are like my 8 groups. And we also know that each praying mantis has 6 legs. So that's like we have 8 groups of 6. So that means that we can write our multiplication equation like this. 8 times 6. 8 groups of 6. And 6 legs. And our groups are our praying mantises. So you may have thought about, let's try look at another way you may have thought about solving this. So if you know it's 8 groups of 6 legs, how can we use multiplication to solve this? Well, maybe you don't know 8 times 6 off the top of your head yet, but we can think about what is a fact that we could use that could help us. Well, maybe you know 2 times 6. So if I know 2 times 6 is 12, I can just keep adding another group of 2 times 6 until I have 8 groups of 6. So here I have 2 groups of 6 and another 2 groups of 6. So altogether, that's giving me 4 groups of 6. I'm almost there. If I add another 2 groups of 6, which is another 12, now I have 2, 4, 6. Now I'm up to 6 groups of 6. So if I add another 2 groups of 6, that gives me 8 groups of 6. So let's look at where we see our 8 groups of 6. Here's 2 groups, another 2 groups, so here we have 8 groups of 6. And now I just need to combine my 12s to figure out that total. So if I know 12 and 12, we already solved this, is 24. And another 12 plus 12 is 24. And then 24 and 24 gets me to 48. Again, 48 legs. Now I'm wondering, let's compare these 2 strategies. What are you thinking about? I'm wondering, where do we see these 2 groups of 6? We have 2 groups of 6, 2 groups of 6, 2 groups of 6, 2 groups of 6. Where do you see those 4 2 groups of 6 over in our first strategy? Let's look. Well, here I see 2 groups of 6. Here I see 2 groups of 6. Another 2 groups, 2 6s, and another 2 6s. So we can see they're similar but different. Here we use some addition for the groups of 6, and here we have multiplication. Are you noticing something else that might be similar? Ah, look at this. Here we have 4 12s. So 4 12s here. And I also notice 4 12s over here. Do you see something else that's similar? Yep, then we combined our 2 24s. So we kind of ended up the same way. We ended up adding those 4 12s together and then the 2 24s to get to our 48. And then we ended with 48 legs. Okay, let's look at one more way that you might have thought about solving this. So going back to, we know we're solving for 8 times 6. And let's say we start with our 2 times 6. That's a fact we know. Well, if I know that 2 times 6 equals 12, I can think about what 4 times 6 is. If I'm just doubling my groups, I doubled my groups, then I'm going to double my answer. So you can think of it as 2 and another 2 to get to 4 groups, or 2 times 2 is 4, or you could think about doubling your 12 to get to 24. Well, look what I can do again. I can double that 4, because I know 4 and 4 is 8, so if I double that, then I know 8 times 6, I can double the 24 to get to 48. That's pretty cool. So now I know 8 times 6 is 48, and that's how many legs Edwin saw. So now let's see, what connections can we make with this problem, or this strategy, and our other strategies. So where do we see 2 groups of 6? Well, we know back in the second strategy we used two groups of 6, and we repeated that. So that's one place where we can see it. Do you see it in our first strategy? Where do we see 2 groups of 6? So we can find that. Here's 2 groups of 6. 2 groups of 6 is 12. Where do you see 4 groups of 6? Let's go back up in our picture. Then we can see 4 groups of 6 is 24. And then finally our 8 groups of 6 is our whole picture. Lots of ways you could have solved this. These are just 3 possible strategies you might have thought about and that I've seen kids use before. How do they compare to what you did?
Thanks, Mrs. Smith. We've been learning this year that multiplication is equal groups of things. In the praying mantis problem, we knew how many groups there were. The groups in this problem are the 8 praying mantises. We also knew the amount in each group, which is the 6 legs on each praying mantis. What we did not know was how many total legs there were. The equations that we could have used to solve for the total amount were adding 8 6's or 8 times 6. Today we looked at different strategies for how to solve a problem, and we saw that we could use addition or multiplication. In this problem, we knew the number of groups and the amount in each group, and we had to figure out the total amount. Let's take a moment to reflect on today's learning by sharing your thinking with someone or writing down your ideas to this question. What is something you're thinking about related to problem solving or multiplication? In today's episode, you had an opportunity to think creatively and critically about how to solve a word problem and how to communicate your thinking on paper. How did you do with this? Which emoji represents how you're feeling about today's learning? If you still have questions, you can always check in with your teacher. Wherever you are in your thinking is right where you should be. To continue your learning, see if you can write your own equal groups problem. Then solve it and try a strategy that you saw today. Here are some ideas of things that come in groups to get you started. Thank you for watching. I'm Miss Matthews. I hope you have a mathematical day and keep on counting. Today's problem came from Brian Bushart's website, seen here.